In the heart of Umuaka, a quaint and peaceful village nestled in southeastern Nigeria, lived a young girl named Amaka. Known for her kindness and intelligence, Amaka had become a beacon of hope and pride for the villagers. From an early age, she had been fascinated with numbers, often helping the village traders calculate their profits and losses with remarkable accuracy. Her ambition was clear. She wanted to become a banker in Lagos, one of Nigeria's largest and most vibrant cities. This dream became a cherished aspiration, not only for Amaka but for the whole community, who saw in her the potential to break free from the cycle of poverty that had ensnared so many generations. Amaka's parents, humble farmers, had always supported her dreams, sacrificing their comforts to provide her with an education. They knew that her success would bring honor not only to their family but to the entire village. Every evening, her father would sit with her, encouraging her studies and reminding her that their love and support would always be behind her. It was in those moments that Amaka felt her dreams weren't hers alone. They belonged to her family, to Umuaka, to everyone who believed in her. But fate has a way of shifting even the most carefully laid plans. One rainy evening, as her parents were returning from the market in a nearby town, a terrible accident took them both. The loss devastated Amaka. In an instant, her world had shattered, her dreams dampened by the sorrow and isolation that only orphanhood could bring. Though the villagers offered their condolences, she felt alone, her once bright future clouded by grief. Despite the kindness of the community, Amaka's heart grew heavy, and the dream that once burned so brightly within her seemed to dim with each passing day. The loss of her parents felt insurmountable, casting a dark shadow over her life, and as much as she tried to move forward, the pain remained, a constant reminder of what she had lost. Months passed, and Amaka's grief persisted, but life in Umuaka continued. The villagers noticed the change in her. The lively young girl they once knew seemed withdrawn, her laughter now a distant memory. Just when it seemed her spark would be forever extinguished, a new group of youth corps members arrived in the village as part of the National Youth Service Corps (NYSC) program. It was a yearly tradition, bringing educated youths from across Nigeria to serve in rural communities. Among them was Corporal Chinedu, a compassionate and gentle young man from Enugu. Corporal Chinedu was immediately drawn to Amaka. He'd heard whispers of her story from the villagers and saw in her a reflection of the resilience and strength he admired. He often observed her walking alone by the river, carrying her schoolbooks yet rarely seen studying. One afternoon he approached her, introducing himself with a warm smile and gentle tone. Amaka, initially hesitant, found his sincerity disarming, and before long, they struck up a conversation. Through his encouragement and guidance, Amaka began to see a glimmer of hope. Chinedu offered to tutor her in her studies, meeting her under the shade of a mango tree that had been a childhood sanctuary. As the days passed, Amaka found herself looking forward to their sessions, her heart lifted by the camaraderie and mentorship Chinedu offered. He spoke to her about his own dreams, his family, and the importance of resilience in the face of adversity. For the first time since her parents' passing, Amaka felt a sense of purpose. She began to study with renewed vigor, determined to honor her parents' memory and fulfill the dreams they had envisioned for her. With Chinedu's guidance, she regained a sense of control over her future, believing that perhaps, despite the pain, there was still a path forward. While Corporal Chinedu's presence brought Amaka hope, not all the corps members shared his sincerity. Among them were three men, Uche Bayo and Rotamai, whose attitudes toward the village and its people were indifferent, if not outright dismissive. They were disinterested in the simple ways of Umuaka, their minds preoccupied with the city's luxuries and amusements. However, they couldn't help but notice Amaka's beauty, her innocence, and above all, her vulnerability. Uche Bayo and Rotamai saw her not as a person deserving of respect, but as an opportunity to satisfy their desires. They observed her connection with Chinedu, envying his genuine friendship with her. Fueled by jealousy and dark intentions, they began plotting ways to bring her closer, disguising their intentions under the guise of friendship. They watched her every move, noting the times she was alone and the places she frequented. In their minds, they justified their actions, convincing themselves that they were entitled to her company. One evening, the three men approached Amaka, pretending to offer help with her studies. They complimented her intelligence, claiming they could connect her with influential contacts who would assist her in achieving her goals in the city. Flattered and still somewhat trusting, Amaka saw no reason to doubt their intentions, having grown accustomed to the kindness Chinedu had shown her. But as she accepted their invitation, she couldn't sense the danger looming ahead. Unaware of the betrayal that lay in wait, Amaka found herself drawn into a dark and twisted scheme. The innocence that had once defined her life in Umuaka was at risk, and as she walked alongside them, she couldn't foresee the suffering and shame they would soon bring upon her. The night that changed everything for Amaka began innocently enough. Uche, Bayo, and Rotamai invited her to an empty classroom at the village school, claiming they needed help with some official paperwork. Feeling grateful for their attention and hopeful about the connections they promised, Amaka went along without hesitation. The idea that her newfound friends could harbor ill intentions never crossed her mind. Once inside, their demeanor shifted, and Amaka quickly realized that something was terribly wrong. They cornered her, their intentions clear, and despite her pleas and struggles, her innocence and trust were brutally shattered. Amaka felt trapped, unable to break free, betrayed by those she had thought were allies. When it was over, she was left physically bruised and emotionally devastated, her spirit broken in a way she could never have anticipated. In the days that followed, Amaka's mind was a whirlwind of shame, confusion, and anger. She couldn't bring herself to tell anyone what had happened, afraid of how the villagers might react and overwhelmed by a crippling sense of guilt. Unable to bear the weight of her trauma, she withdrew further, her once bright presence reduced to a shadow. The life she had known, filled with hope and ambition, felt irreversibly shattered. In a small village like Umuaka, secrets rarely stayed hidden for long. Though Amaka tried to keep to herself and avoid attention, the village grapevine had already begun to buzz with rumors. Whispers spread about her interactions with the core members, distorted and embellished with every retelling. Some claimed she had willingly been involved with them, while others passed judgment, assuming the worst. Each rumor was a knife to her already broken heart, a reminder of how little control she had over her own narrative. Instead of sympathy, Amaka found herself facing suspicion and harsh judgments from people she had once trusted. The supportive glances she had once received were replaced with scornful glares and whispers behind her back. She became the object of gossip and ridicule, her reputation tarnished by things she hadn't done, her silence mistaken for complicity. The shame and isolation were too much for her to bear, and Amaka's once determined spirit was now a shadow of itself, battered by the betrayal and rumors that followed. Determined to escape the stigma, she made a difficult decision. She packed a small bag and left Umuaka in the dead of night, hoping to find solace and anonymity in a new place. She walked away from her home, her dreams, and the only life she'd ever known, fleeing into an uncertain future, carrying the scars of betrayal and judgment with her. As the weeks passed, Uche, Bayo, and Rotamai resumed their lives, feeling confident that their actions had been left behind in the shadows of Umuaka. They showed no remorse, barely even discussing the incident amongst themselves, convinced that Amaka's departure absolved them of any responsibility. However, life soon had its own way of reminding them that actions carry consequences, often in the most unexpected ways. It began subtly, with small, inexplicable misfortunes. Uche, a normally healthy man, fell seriously ill. His energy drained, and doctors couldn't pinpoint a cause. Bayo, on the cusp of a new job in Abuja, suddenly found the offer withdrawn, his dreams of career advancement slipping through his fingers. Rotamai returned to his family business, only to find it falling apart under mysterious financial troubles. They dismissed these events as bad luck at first, but as the misfortunes accumulated, they grew anxious, sensing an ominous connection. In moments of desperation, each man privately wondered if these hardships were a form of punishment. Their thoughts returned to Amaka and the pain they had caused her. An unspoken fear gnawed at them, a sense that something beyond their understanding was at play, as if the universe itself sought justice. The weight of guilt pressed heavily on them, casting a dark shadow over their lives, and they knew they could not simply move on without facing the consequences of their actions. Desperate for answers and haunted by guilt, the three men sought out the village's seer, a respected elder known for his spiritual insight and wisdom. Though skeptical at first, they were willing to try anything to understand the source of their seemingly endless misfortune. The seer welcomed them, his gaze penetrating and knowing, as if he could already see the darkness they carried in their hearts. The seer listened quietly as they recounted their troubles, though none of them dared to mention Amaka directly. After a long silence, he spoke, revealing that the spirits of Amaka's parents were restless, seeking justice for the suffering their daughter had endured. The seer told them that they would continue to face hardship until they took responsibility for their actions, advising that the only path to redemption lay in finding Amaka and seeking her forgiveness. Only then, he warned, would they find peace. The revelation hit each of them hard, their faces paling as the weight of their actions became undeniable. The thought of confronting Amaka, of admitting their guilt and asking for her forgiveness, filled them with dread. But they knew they had no choice. The path of forgiveness was the only way to lift the curse upon them. With heavy hearts, they left the seer's hut, determined to make amends, no matter how painful the journey ahead might be. Uche, Bayo, and Rotamai were unsure where to start looking for Amaka. She had vanished without a trace, and the village hadn't heard from her since she fled. They remembered, however, that Corporal Chinedu had been close to her and might know her whereabouts. Summoning what courage they had left, the three men approached him, shame and regret etched on their faces. Initially, Chinedu reacted with shock and anger as they confessed their actions, disgusted by their betrayal. He had seen Amaka's potential and kindness, and the knowledge of what she had suffered at their hands filled him with righteous fury. But after seeing their genuine remorse and desperation, he softened, realizing that helping them could bring some justice to Amaka's life. Reluctantly, he agreed to assist them in their quest to find her, hoping this path would offer Amaka some measure of peace. The journey to find Amaka took the men across several towns, following any small lead they could uncover. Chinedu led the way, his familiarity with Amaka's favorite places and connections in nearby areas helping them along. For Uche, Bayo, and Rotamai, each step brought new revelations as they reflected on their actions and the life they had shattered. Throughout the journey, Chinedu made it clear to them that forgiveness was not guaranteed. They needed to understand the gravity of the pain they had caused her, and that their remorse, while essential, might never fully undo the damage. The men began to realize the depth of their wrongdoing, each step drawing them closer to both physical and emotional reconciliation. As they neared the town where she was rumored to be living, they prepared themselves for the possibility that Amaka might not forgive them, and that they would have to accept whatever decision she made. After weeks of searching, they finally found Amaka working in a small shop in a distant town. She had built a quiet life for herself, though the pain of her past still lingered in her eyes. When she saw the three men, her initial reaction was one of shock and anger. The sight of them brought back memories she had tried hard to bury. She confronted them, demanding to know why they had sought her out after everything they had done. With Chinedu's guidance, the men humbly apologized, expressing their deep remorse and acknowledging the damage they had caused. They pleaded for her forgiveness, not for their sake but in the hope that it might bring her some peace. After a long, tense silence, Amaka spoke. Though forgiveness didn't come easily, she could see the genuine regret in their eyes. In that moment she chose to forgive, not just for their sake but for her own healing. With this act, she felt a weight lift from her heart, allowing her to finally start moving forward. For Uche, Bayo, and Rotamai, her forgiveness marked the beginning of a new path, one where they carried a deep respect for the lives they had once taken for granted. As they returned to Umuaka, they left behind a story of pain and redemption, each man forever changed by the lessons they had learned. Amaka, too, felt a new sense of freedom, ready to rebuild her life, stronger than before.